Top of the morning to you listeners out there. Welcome back to Articulate with Steve McJones. And happy St. Patty's Day-ish. It's around this time. It's March time. We're in the middle of March. And I actually didn't plan this, but our guest today, Christina Crawford, actually was born in Ireland. So it kind of works out. And yeah, I met her while we were looking for places to live. She was looking for a place to live. I was looking for a place to live. But, we didn't end up living with each other. But we did meet, and we kind of just hit it off. And we thought it'd be fun to record this podcast episode. In it, we basically just cover, her heritage and where she was born, where she moved to in Georgia. And not only that, but it kind of develops into this point in her life that she's at now, where a lot of things are happening mentally and with her family and all this sort of stuff. There's just a lot of lessons to be learned in the story, I think. And like her background, and like she likes to say, she's like a mutt. And I think this podcast episode is a little bit like that, because it's just got a little bit of everything in it. Life lessons, fun stories, all the juicy good stuff that you need in an episode. So, enjoy. So, Christina Crawford. All right, Christina Crawford.
Let's go with that.
Let's go with that.
Mommy dearest.
Sure, and yeah. And where does the Crawford come from then?
That's my father's name.
Okay. So, we are live.
Okay.
And so, your father, is he from Ireland?
He's American.
He's American.
Yep.
Okay.
He
So,
was. Yeah.
then see, you've given me little bits and pieces of this story across the board, and so I'm curious to see how it's actually going to pull together. So, Crawford is from your dad, and he's American.
Correct.
But you were born in
Dublin,
Ireland.
Yep.
How did that happen?
So my dad and my mother, they met in Ireland. I'm not sure about their courting relationship or the history of that goes. I'd have to ask my brother, John, about the details of that.
Sure.
My story begins, I was born in 1977 in Dublin. I have an older brother whose name is John, and he is 7 years older.
Okay.
So...
Same, both parents?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Same parents, Pauline and John, or right. Jack.
Was he born in...
He was actually born in England.
In England? So was your dad... Were your parents just nomads? Or?
No, they went back and forth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Originally, though, where were they born?
He was born in... I would say, actually, he was born in, I think, West Orange.
West Orange.
New Jersey.
New Jersey. Wow, okay.
Yep, and she was from England. And, so ancestrally, it's like, I'm a mutt, you know, English, Irish, American, all the things.
Mixed together.
And it came full circle.
Right, yeah.
Because here we are in New Jersey.
There's something about New Jersey compared to
Yeah.
Ireland and England. That's a big commitment. Between those three, yeah. I would have to visit the other two before I chose New Jersey.
Yeah, and I haven't been back, sadly, since I was 3.5, but...
Right, so you lived there, you were born there and stayed there for 3.5 years?
Yep, born there. I don't have a lot of memories from early childhood, but I have my brother's memories that he shared with me.
Okay, I was going to say.
So, yeah, it's
lots of potatoes, just plenty.
Lots of potatoes. My dad worked for Guinness.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
So that's like OG.
St. James Gate, yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you have a direct connection to Guinness. And Ireland.
And also my uncle, my mother's brother, worked for Aer Lingus.
What is that?
Like the Irish airline.
Oh, okay. I have heard of that, actually.
He's retired from there. But wow. So...
Straight up Ireland.
Yeah, right. Like, it's...
Well, it's funny that you were born there, and that's such a big part of your family and everything. Yep. And yet you still identify as all these different sorts of things, you know?
Well, every part of my life has given me such strength that I can't commit to either one specifically. You know what I mean?
You don't get to pick a favorite.
No, you don't.
Right.
It's not only geographically, it's also in terms of family. obviously there's a reason why I've had to move around so much, and it's been family that has provided that strength and that
the comfort almost to keep on keeping on.
Yep.
Yeah, that's I had a guy on last week that talked about he moved here from Haiti, and that he had to find a way to keep moving on and a way to find home and comfort in everything that he does. So that was an interesting person to have on. So what happened with Ireland? How come you had to leave when you were 3.5?
Well, that's a long story. Within, I would say, so when I was 3.5, within a year, both of my parents were deceased.
Oh, wow.
There was like family drama, things happened. There's a lot
Right.
of details there that will be shared at a later date. But to make a long story short, I was blessed, and my brother was as well, to have, despite all these things that happened with our parents, we had other families step in immediately to care for us.
Wow.
Being that it was, I was born in 77, so that we're talking 80, 81. The Irish government was, Catholic ruled, basically. Like there's very little separation of church and state, essentially. So they had like social services and,
Wow.
lawyers and the family, and everybody was trying to protect us, but also try, this is a situation that no one had prepared for
Right.
for
It's always
themselves
tough.
or for us. Mm-hmm. So eventually it turned out that my father's brother, who lived in Georgia in the U.S.,
Uncle. Yeah.
my uncle, he and his wife decided to step in and adopt us.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, did the Irish
correct.
helped you out with that, getting
Right.
over there?
So he and his sister Joan, who lived in Georgia, decided, like, who's going to be the family that can take on both John and Christina at this point in their lives, where they need to stay
Right.
together.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
After that, and you said how much older is he than you?
7 years. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So he was probably. I mean, he was.
Yep.
What, 10 at this point?
Yep.
10
Yeah.
at this point.
So like the least optimal time to have all this upheaval happen. So
Right.
at the same time, he's trying to take care of me and deal with all the things that he's way too old to deal with, and be aware of at this point in his life. So we ended up moving to Marietta, Georgia, with an aunt and uncle. This was, so I didn't say before, but my maiden name is Crawford. So Joan Crawford and William Kemp. This was my father's sister
Okay.
and her husband.
Okay.
So they live in Marietta. They already have, let me think, how many kids they have.
I was wondering how much.
Yeah.
You said it was who was the most capable of taking
Right.
on these
So,
two kids. And,
This was the most optimal option at this point. So they already had 3 kids of their own. And then they agreed to also adopt us at a young age.
3 kids is quite a bit already.
Correct.
On top of that,
Yep.
that's what I grew up
Yeah.
with.
And they were capable. Like, everybody kind of like chipped in and was like, we got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's nice.
this is my Irish passport that I believe they had to give me a passport in order to get my American passport.
You as a little 3-year-old,
Yep.
just they're like, all right, sit in the seat.
Hey!
Sit in the seat. We're gonna give you a
Yep,
passport,
exactly.
basically. Yeah. So they had to give you this first,
Right, to
So that
get-
they could
this
give
was
you
my-
again another.
My first American passport. And it's funny, if you go through and look at the stamps on it, it's U.S. immigration, August 15th of 1980.
Did you pass the
And I
immigration
got my
test?
visa. I think I did. I guess. I hope. If I go back, I'll find out, I suppose.
Sure.
And then I have immigration stamp from June 19th of 1981.
It's funny how they spell that.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Irlande. That's how it should be spelled. I
Okay,
feel
so
like.
admitted U.S. Customs July 1st of 81.
So did your aunt and uncle have to sign off on any of these, or
Yeah,
they
William
worked it
Kemp
together? Sure.
definitely signed off on the American passport.
Right.
So they became our guardians.
Sure. And how long did you stay with them for?
We were with them until I was 9.
Oh, so real formative years.
Yeah,
That's
so
I'm curious as to why only up until 9, but we'll get there.
we will definitely get there.
But I'm curious as to how that period.
So my
went
memories
down.
of those years,
Probably still pretty foggy.
still pretty foggy, and I can't figure out if that's because I've blocked it or, I guess sometimes when you're a kid, you pick out certain memories, right? Mm-hmm. Good or bad, and as you get older, you have other things that fill up your mind.
Right.
Other things take over.
Yeah.
What I do remember is my brother, John, being my caretaker.
That's what I was wondering. Yeah, because once you said he was 10 and you were 3,
yep.
I feel like he would, although still being very young, he would kind of inherently take on that role.
He was my guardian, essentially, through all of it.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So he was the one I remember
big part of
taking me out for walks, and, we would go play outside, and his friends would come over, and I would break his shit, and, like, all these things would happen, and...
His friends would come over, I'd break his shit.
Yeah.
You know how the brothers
get into trouble. Yeah, no, it was
it
was a basic, like, a regular childhood.
Yeah.
I do remember being sick a lot in school, which is weird.
Yeah, probably not used to that Georgia air. I guess,
yeah, the Georgia air or whatever was happening in the house,
right.
which they did the best they could.
Well, you had that many kids together. Yep. There's going to be quite a bit of germs flying around.
Yeah, and they weren't financially that stable to handle all of it.
Sure.
There's also some alcoholism that plays into it.
And when doesn't it play into the whole thing?
Yeah. And that's looking back, I didn't really think about it as a kid, but the older I got and the more family members that kind of chimed in their opinions were like, we know from this perspective what really went down.
Mm-hmm. Is that the reason that you kind of had to leave there? Or?
Basically, yeah. Well, the reason I had to really leave, when I was 9, my aunt died from pancreatic cancer.
Oh, man. That's rough.
So, this is my father's sister. And it went down fast, obviously, as that kind of cancer sadly does. Mm-hmm. And as a kid, I was young. I didn't know what was going on. I just knew that...
Had you developed a close relationship with them at this point?
That's the thing, is it's funny. I was taking notes before, and I was trying to, like, create a timeline of, like, my memories, right?
Right.
And like I said before, most of the memories that I had from being in Georgia were of my brother.
Right.
We had, like, family holidays, and I can remember my cousins being around and, dinners and things like that. But in general, my brightest memories are of my brother and myself.
Right. And that's consolation in itself at some point.
He was kind of like the glue.
Right.
That kind of held us all
immediate families.
Together. Yeah.
Right. I think there's something about that relationship that feels...
The sibling
relation, it just feels more real for some reason. You know what I mean? And that's not to say that to take away from any other relationship, but the fact that you two had already been through that big experience.
Yep.
And moved over and gone through that whole thing. I feel like that's...
Which I didn't appreciate fully until, obviously, when you're older.
Right.
And you look back and you're like, you really saved me. Like, you're the one that kind of protected me, and, you knew the minute that we left Ireland that I was your...
only family.
Yeah.
Yeah. And luckily, I was thinking more along the lines of they just became financially unstable, but...
It was a combination of things.
Well, I mean, once one person has to go, all those medical bills,
yep.
All that sort of stuff.
And they didn't have the most stable marriage, like, all these are things that I didn't realize until I was an adult.
Right.
As a kid, you're like, whatever.
You kind of just go with things.
Yeah. I do remember, so my Aunt Joan, when she was in her last days and she passed away, we went to the funeral. I do remember that. And one of the few memories I have very clearly is coming back to the house that we lived at, and my uncle sitting me down and, being like, so at this point, my brother John's going into high school. Okay, I'm 9. So now they have to make another decision. The family in general.
Yeah.
All the siblings. They have to figure out, what do we do with John and Christina at this point? Right? Literally. Like,
what do we do with John and Christina?
Right. Okay, so, no, not to put it like...
Right. No, I get you.
What's the best for them at this point? So...
And real quick, do you remember what you were like in this period at all? I mean, you've talked about how your brother was a big
I was
influence.
anxious. Yeah, I was anxious. Like, as a kid, I was quiet, shy, anxious.
Kind of just looking up to your older brother
Yeah.
for the answers.
Yep.
Type of thing.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
I remember having a lot of bad dreams. I slept heavy. Like, I was anxious during the day.
And then I just crashed.
Yeah, no, literally. Like, I would fall asleep at night. This is one of those bizarre memories that keeps coming back, is I would fall asleep at night, slept so heavy that I would fall out of bed, probably having bad dreams. I would wake up in the morning on the floor.
That's
wild. Like, as a kid, like, that's some heavy sleep.
Yeah.
So that means you're either repressing some things, like, at the age of 8 or 9.
Very
You know,
heavy,
like,
heavy
there's some heavy shit that...
You're kind of shoving down deep.
Exactly.
Deep inside of you.
Yeah.
So this question was posed, what do we do with these kids?
Right.
And
so we got back, this is like one of those bizarre memories I have. My cousin's husband, Morgan, he was an attorney at the time, and he was kind of like trying to help us navigate, or help the family navigate the next step.
Where are we going to put these kids? What do we do with these kids?
What? Right? We love them so much. We want them to thrive, but what's best at this time? So I remember him saying, do you want to stay here, or do you want to move to New Jersey?
So they gave you...
Right. I'm like, I'm 9 years old. What am I going to say? Like, I want to stay with my brother.
Yeah. No, I'm 9, actually. I have no idea what is New Jersey? What is that?
Yeah, right. I mean, my aunt and uncle that eventually did adopt me, I should say, in New Jersey, we had seen them a lot. Like, they would take us on vacation, and, they were a huge part of our lives, maybe knowing that eventually this could be a possibility. Yeah. So I already have known my cousins in New Jersey. We gone on vacations together. They came down to see us in Georgia. Kind of made an effort. Yeah, there was a lot of effort.
Okay.
So obviously, my initial reaction was I'd like to stay with my brother, but that was I think they were just throwing it out there, trying to bridge the gap.
So if you went to New Jersey, you wouldn't have been able to stay with your brother?
I didn't know that at the time. It was kind of like
wondering.
Right. Long and short of it is because my brother John was already going into high school, and he'd already dealt with so much, right? Like moving twice already and all the drama.
Right.
His option was to stay in Georgia with my cousins and finish his high school career. Like, have some kind of stability.
Right. You mean had all his friends over there?
Yeah, had his friends, and
probably had a prom date planned out.
Right,
He was like, no, I can't move to Jersey.
Yeah.
I have a girlfriend.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And it was best for him. Like, he needs, for once in his life, to have like a good.
Right, but then for you, that decision to move away was like, but that's my dude.
Correct. So I did end up getting, I guess I'm gonna call it adopted. It wasn't. It was a legal
ladder move that they just tossed you back.
Yeah. So I ended up moving to New Jersey to live with another aunt and uncle. So this is now my father's brother, Gene, and his wife, Valerie.
Right.
And they're these amazing people. Like, they own their own business. They have 2 sons already.
Okay.
One's my age and one's 3 years younger.
All right.
Established household. Like, they could give me stability.
Sure.
Sure. So that's what happened. So I moved to New Jersey at the age of 10.
Okay.
And finished out the rest of my adult life with them.
Really? Because this is where you said, it's funny, that immediately right after you said that they had their own business, I'm like, all right, this is where she gets a lot of her influence from. Because that's, I mean, one of the reasons I brought you on today was because I know how your brain works and how you're always kind of going and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, well, that's literally, like, I learned, it's funny that you bring that up, actually. Because I learned to appreciate the struggle, right, from a young age. But then once I got to appreciate, like, what the struggle can bring you, like, once I got to New Jersey and, like, settled in with like a consistent, stable family, we had, dinner together every night. We had breakfast every morning. Like, it was consistent.
Yeah.
Did I miss John? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we would still see each other, 2 or 3 times a year. Like, they made a point of making sure that they would send me to him. Like, I would fly by myself which I don't even know if that's a thing anymore. But yeah, at the age of like 10, 11, 12, like I went to see his high school graduation. Like they would fly me down to Georgia. They would fly him up to see me. We would go back and forth.
Well, that's awesome.
And it was hard, but yeah, they still made sure that we had that connection.
Sure. Yeah, that's great.
And at the same time, you know, I was living in a consistent family household
that had an organized life.
Yes.
Basically, right.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think that's what that's what it kind of, for me at least, from an outside perspective, looking at you, is what I see most of between this whole thing. And and that's not to take away from the Georgia or the Ireland or anything, because I know that's a very big part of your past. But that's I think puberty age is like a very formative thing. So it was probably easy for you to get pretty close with these people, having those daily interactions and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and it was huge. And
so it was 2 brothers.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 brothers.
2 brothers. 2 brothers.
Well, it's like a Brady Bunch blend at this point. But yeah, that's who I ended up growing up with. And yeah, John and I still had this amazing connection. But, you know, he was able to live his own life at that point. You know, he was able to kind of like figure himself out.
Okay.
Without having to worry about me or worrying about, you know, I mean, obviously the past is the past. And that was always going to be a demon in his head. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it gave me that like consistent childhood that I had never had.
Yeah.
At the perfect time.
Yeah.
You know?
Right, like right at that 10-year-old age.
Yeah.
And it was perfect for John too. So that's great. That's awesome. That's and the fact that it was in New Jersey is just hilarious to me. Right? That it brings it back into here. Which Jersey, as far as I can tell, I don't know what part of Jersey you were in at this point.
Livingston, so North Jersey.
Okay.
Essex County.
Good area?
Yeah.
Okay, because it seems like the good areas of Jersey are like really nice.
Yeah.
Compared, as far as I've seen, at least. But that's awesome. So you were able to go to high school around here and everything, and have best friends and have that relationship.
Yep, graduated
and
LHS.
Did you feel any of that following you at all? And you know, like,
it's always,
obviously you missed your brother and we're going back and forth and everything, but was that ever like weird for you?
It was definitely weird. I didn't realize it. It's another one of those things that like, so recently, as an adult and dealing with the nonsense we'll get to at some point that I'm dealing with now, I realized that I'm a shapeshifter. Like, not to be like, not in a weird way, but like I'm definitely a person that is good at shifting their emotions and reactions and absorbing things around them and just kind of going with the flow. Okay. To my own detriment at times. Oh, really? You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I was going to say, it almost sounds like a superpower if you.
Well, it can be. Right. Yeah, it absolutely can be. To be able to navigate things as a young child at the age of 3, 4, 5, up till 9, 10, even through, you know, shifting 3 households, right? Mm-hmm. Being able to just go with the flow can be a really good thing. Yeah. Until you do it for too long, and then you don't know who you are. Yeah. Yeah. So I would say that's one of the only negatives that's come out of it is that it took me until literally 2 years ago
to come to that conclusion.
To come to like who I am. You've
just been kind of skating
what
by.
I like, you know. Yeah. Funny story, I was in marriage counseling last year, and one of the first questions the therapist asked was, "Who are you?" Right? Basic question. Right. Very basic question, right? Sure. So loaded. I was like, loaded question. Loaded question, but I was like, well, you know, I'm a mom, a teacher, I'm a wife. No. Who are you? Yeah. And I was like, fuck. You know? It's like, damn. Yeah, like that's a good question. Such a basic, like three words, right? We're talking 3 words. Yeah. Like, how would you answer that? Who are you? Who are you? It's a very good question. I personally have we've had a lot of conversations I think this far about how I've had a lot of time to to live by myself and kind of have me, the walls, and the thoughts in between bouncing back and forth. So I've had a good amount of time to, at least I think that question begs another question about, well, how do you want me to answer that question based on, you know, do you want me to tell you
who I am based off of what I like, what I do, my relationships.
Yeah, but that's not who you are. That's what got me when he asked me. It was like, at my core, like, who am I?
Sure.
Like, and he's like, well, what's your name? And I was like, Christina. Well, do you know what that means? Mm-hmm. And he's like, that means, what do you say, tiny Christ or something like that. And I was like, well, that's not me. Like, I'm not, like, I was born Catholic and raised Episcopalian, and then went back to Catholic.
Short. I'm not tiny.
Right, I'm not that small. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I'm trying to, like, not overthink it, but still overthink it.
Yeah. Wow, that's very...
But who are you? And I'm like... Then you start digging deeper, and you're like, okay, I'm strong, I'm a survivor, I absorb other people's energy, I can handle any situation, is that who I want to be? And then you start, like, way overthinking all of it, you're like, oh my god.
Yeah, so, I mean, have you... Well, so let's get to, I mean, we'll come back to that question, because that is a good question. So, I mean, when you were living and growing up and going through high school and college and everything, I mean, you were obviously some sort of person, right? You had to form some way to interact socially at that point.
Yeah, but I still had no idea what I wanted. Like, I think I literally was very good at just going with the flow.
Okay.
Right? Like, I've always considered myself an optimist, okay?
Okay.
But I think that was, like, a defense mechanism. No, literally. Like, you laugh, but I've done the same thing. Yeah, no, optimism can be, like, this amazing shield, right?
Wow.
That protects you from...
reality.
From reality, from giving a shit about anything.
Yeah.
Not giving a shit, but from dealing with it.
Deal with it!
So, I think I can remember clearly. So my Aunt Valerie, who I live with from 9 years old on up till now, who's amazing. She forced me, or encouraged me, I should say, to find my voice.
Sure.
Right? From the age of 9. She was like, here's this person who doesn't know who they are. And I remember her trying to convince me to say what I wanted, or to express an opinion.
Yeah.
Like, literally. Like,
she just asked you to be like, what do you think
what
about
do you
this
want?
food?
And I was like, I don't care. No, tell me what you want. I'm like, it doesn't matter. No, it really does matter. Like, it's okay to express an opinion.
Right.
Like, I think up until that point, I was just kind of like, whatever. Like, this is what's happening. Go with the flow.
Yeah. That's kind of me right now.
Yeah, right? You're a shapeshifter.
Yeah, a little bit. But I kind of have
which is okay to a certain extent, but, like, if you don't have a sense of self at some point in your life, it's going to kill you.
Yeah.
Like, because you have... there's certain gifts that you're born with that you may not even realize that you're born with them until it's too late.
Yeah.
And if you don't ever express an opinion about what you're good at, what your gifts are, like... You have that little voice inside your head. It's like your Jiminy Cricket, right? So,
right.
No, literally.
And always let your conscience be your guide.
I'm with it.
Certain situations, it's your gut instinct.
Sure.
I really feel like I never, until a few years ago, trusted my gut instinct.
Really?
I was still that people pleaser that go with the flow, keep everything smooth. It's fine no matter what's happening. Everything's great. It's going to be fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until you wake up one day and you realize that, like, you've been swallowing your own
tongue.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
just because you've been trying to skate by on everybody else's expectations of you.
Yep.
And so what kind of led up to this then? I feel like it doesn't just happen like that, where you're just like, yeah, I realized there was that moment where they asked you that question, who are you?
Yeah.
But I feel like that was, like you said, it kind of builds and builds until there's a point where you just realize.
I think everyone has a threshold. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it comes when you're 15. Sometimes it comes when you're 41.
Yeah, right.
For me, so when I left, I went to college in Pennsylvania to Marywood University.
Okay.
I went for photography because I loved, in high school I loved taking photographs and, developing in the back room and all that.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I'll do this for a living, right? I was like, this is my thing.
Yeah.
And then you get to college and it's a whole different ball game.
Right.
It's,
completely different
it's cutthroat.
world.
Yeah, totally different world. I'm like, now what do I do?
Yeah.
And then I panic because I don't have the tools to be able to deal with what I want, right? I've always been the one who's going with the flow and things will just happen and I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And then...
Now you have to put some momentum into
Correct.
it. Now you have to be that factor that keeps things going a little bit.
And then the bottom fell out and I had no idea what to do. So I left college and I came back to Livingston.
Oh, really? Living back with your aunt?
Correct.
Again? Okay.
Yep. And I was lucky enough to find a job at a preschool.
Oh, okay.
So this was where I feel like I found my place, like my gift.
Right,
Literally.
yeah, the gift.
Yeah.
And that was...
And that was teaching. That was like turning whatever things I'd learned in my life into creating consistency for kids.
Right.
Like, that's really
filtering
like,
that.
No, literally learning.
Past.
Yep, filtering the past and helping 2- and 3-year-olds on a daily basis. I could be their consistency.
Okay.
And I did that for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
Yep, 20
Wow.
years of teaching between Livingston. We moved a couple times, but I always kept the same job because I was good at it and I loved it.
Yeah.
You know, and I was just...
What do you like about kindergartners, though? Really? I mean, how many times did you have a kindergartner pee on you? That is my worst. That is my least favorite thing about imagining. Everyone's like, "What grade would you teach?" And I'm like, definitely not children because I don't want to have to deal with.
Yeah.
I mean, let alone if I were to have my own kid, I don't want to deal with their bowel movements.
Well, it's helping kids navigate their own emotions when they're not able to.
Oh yeah.
And it's being proactive. Like that's, I think what my strength is not even with just kids, but with adults too, is kind of like listening, right? Because children obviously are not really good at expressing what they want, but if you can wait a second and see what they're trying to tell you without telling you and be a step ahead, then you can help them navigate their emotions and, you know, it's that basic.
Sure.
So.
Wow. I never thought about it that way as having, because I mean, obviously, kids are human beings still, right?
No, they are, but like adults also do the same thing.
Right. It's just on a completely different scale, which is interesting to see how that relates. And like I said, I've never thought about it that way, to think about that. Yeah, these kids have regular emotions. It's not like unheard of.
No, it's just all about listening and paying attention to what energy people throw out there, and kids pick up on every type
of
body
language. Yep. And, which is weird. Kids are smart, unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah. If they were just a little bit dumber, they could form their own vibrations and energy.
Yeah, but that's the beauty of kids, is like they are who they are.
Yeah.
You know, so you have to listen to that and help them navigate their own world.
So, I don't know if you wanted to fill in a little bit in between, but leading up to you having your own kid, you know what I mean? Like, that was probably a big thing for you, obviously.
Yeah, so, let me see where I could... So, yeah, when I left college, moved back to Livingston and got the preschool job, I was kind of floundering at that point, obviously.
Right. You at least had the job.
Yeah, I had a job.
But what else?
Financially stable. Was living back at home. And then I found, once again, I always seem to find a person to attach myself to. Right? Mm-hmm. Usually a guy. In this case, it was a guy. And I ended up staying with him for 6 years. It wasn't a great relationship, but it wasn't terrible.
Okay.
It was one of those, like, just the time and the place were lined up appropriately, where it was like I had someone to have my back, and I was working, and we smoked a lot of weed.
Well, of course.
You know?
Yeah, that's as you do.
And before I knew it, 6 years went by, and I have these, like, epiphanies, right? Like, it's not a midlife crisis, it's like a phase, right?
Sure.
It's like
it's a chapter.
every 7 years or 8 years, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? You know, like, this is not the real me. So I feel like there's got to be a word for it.
that phase of
It's growth.
growth.
It really is. It's growth. It's, realizing like every few years I'm like, am I here? Nope, I can do better.
Yeah.
Personally.
Okay. But
You know.
yeah, getting better.
Realize I don't need to attach myself to somebody else. I need to work on myself, and that's not working because I'm miserable. So
yeah.
Yeah.
The smoking weed was fun for the first maybe
Yeah.
5 years, and then the latter two they were a little much.
yeah,
right?
and I was like, I'm not pushing myself, and you go to therapy a little bit, and they
Start to figure
talk you
that
through a
out.
few things, and then you realize you're not living up to your full potential, or
Yeah. So that it was more of a within that relationship. It's not like you were unhappy, but you weren't as happy as you felt you could push to be.
I know I could do better.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's and I think that's healthy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's very. While that period may seem like kind of a haze or whatever, I think it was an important period.
Yeah,
It's kinda
and
what I mean.
people around me knew I wasn't happy. That's the one, not the one gauge, but one of the biggest gauges is, my aunt, my brothers, cousin brothers, and all them. They're like just waiting. Like waiting for me to realize that I can do better.
Right.
Like realize that I'm stronger. Realize that
Yeah, there's
I can
more
push
beyond
through.
this.
Yeah.
This one
Yep.
chapter of your
So
life.
I guess every few years I've gotten older and
Well, your taste
I've
buds
gotten
change
stronger.
every 7 years. So.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't taste good anymore.
Yeah,
Let's
it just
try
doesn't.
something new. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's great. Well, it is unfortunate that sometimes you are unhappy in that, or you have to kind of go through a downfall between a relationship, or you have to do something that may seem kind of bad in the moment, but in the end, like you said,
Once you do it, you realize you're like, what took me so long? Or why did I waste 6 years of my life with this person? Not waste. Like there was good times and bad times, of course. But like
Sure.
at the end of the day, you're like, if you go to bed every night, you're like, oh, what am I doing?
Yeah. So after that, then what was the next step for you? What was the pivoting moment?
So I realized that, it's not good to. I was like, oh my God, I just wasted 6 years of my life with this person, and, who knows what else I could have accomplished in that time, etc. So I was fortunate enough to get a nanny job with one of the families that I was working at the preschool, and they owned a house, so I ended up having an apartment by myself, right, like for the first time in my life.
That's a big move.
Right, by
Yeah.
myself for the first time. And
You and the walls.
me and the walls, talking to the walls.
Right.
Had some ups and downs, like relationships that came and went in a few months, whatever.
Sure.
But then I was there for probably a year when I met my husband. So my brother/cousin was getting married, and I was single, and my soon-to-be husband
was
single. So we both went and met each other there. And we dated for 2 years, and it was great. We had this great relationship. And I think it was another one of those attaching myself to someone situations.
moments,
but yeah,
it was in a different way where
yeah.
he probably actually pushed you a little bit too
Yeah.
and challenged you.
Yeah, he had a very type A personality.
At this point, were you? So I realized that you had those 6 years where you were in that kind of haze thing, but throughout that and up to this point, were you still kind of that person that was juggling a lot of things at once, sort of thing, or had you not?
Yeah, I mean, just I think because of the nature of my job,
Feels like so much is going on.
Yeah, well, no, but honestly, I've never been one to be able to like leave work at work, right? So, as a teacher, preschoolers even, you don't just shut it off at the end of the day, right? So you care so much about these kids, and you want them to flourish and thrive, and you care about their families, and yeah, you get home and you smoke some weed, and the day starts over again.
Wow.
It's like
You hear that?
it became like
all the
Groundhog Day.
All the kindergarten teachers
Yeah.
are all smoking weed
Yep.
after they get home.
No, it's like literally Groundhog Day, So before I knew it, 6 years went by.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
which
So it
can
was
happen.
still that kind of busy mindset, but it was
Yep.
keeping you in one place
Exactly.
as opposed to being a
It was
productive,
that
busy-
was my stability. You know, that was
the consistency.
yeah, I
Right.
guess,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Interesting.
Without even knowing it.
So then
suppose.
throw in this factor of a solid 2-year relationship and a guy that wants to marry you, and how does that play into the whole thing?
Well, I got pregnant.
Right? As one
Right?
does.
As one does. And we were already together for 2 years, and we were in love, and it was like, well, let's just get married. So we threw a wedding together in 3 months, and it was an amazing, gorgeous wedding. Like,
Yeah.
bagpipes, and
Oh,
you know, it was
wow.
at the Manor in West Orange. It was this beautiful
You had the
venue, and
Georgia brothers
everybody
and
was there.
sisters and
Yep, everyone was
cousins
there.
and- Wow.
Yep,
Wow.
everyone from day one up until this point was there, and it was amazing. And we had a very happy, functional, calm marriage. We did not fight. When I tell you we did not have a single fight for 15 years, right? You laugh because that doesn't sound right.
No.
No, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Because I, once again, was
Going with the flow.
going with the flow,
Yeah.
not rocking the boat, dealing with my daughter, you know. My husband was supportive and doing his best for the family, but I think we just got lost, you know, in doing what we're good at,
Yeah.
right?
We're being passive and
Exactly.
being supportive
Yep,
of the
passive and
passiveness.
supportive for a good 15 years.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
And during this time, the relationship with your daughter, how was that going?
It was great.
Great.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
good.
We never
Because
had
you were talking
issues.
about how, kind of relating to the kindergartner type thing about, like, feeling out her emotions and feeling
Yeah,
out.
she had anxiety. Like, she's had anxiety since she was, I don't know, 4 or 5. Like,
Oh, wow.
some kids have, I don't know if you've dealt with kids a lot, but there's some kids that have, from a young age, like, sensory issues. Like, if their socks don't feel right, they freak out. If they have to wear
really?
jeans versus leggings, like, she had that kind of situation going on.
Okay.
And it was always like, that's weird, because I'm so laid back, and he's so laid back, and not laid back, but
Right.
yeah, like, that's so bizarre.
Yeah.
But then it would happen, like, every couple years, it would be a different thing that would happen. Like, she had a habit cough, or the sensory stuff, or
The different phases.
the different phases. But kids are amazing sponges for
Oh,
the
that's
energy
what I've
around
heard.
them.
Right.
So, looking back, like,
The anxiety, instead of
Right.
you considering,
I'm
like,
always
why
like,
does she...
I'm fine, everything's good, it's fine.
Yeah, instead of you thinking that everything was easygoing and supportive,
Right.
it was, you're like, oh, maybe
There was
she's
this
getting a little bit of
undercurrent.
anxiety
Yeah.
from a little bit of anxiety
Yep.
kind of going on, and you didn't even realize it.
Nope.
Well, and that's something that I've realized about myself recently is, like, I was very stressed out for this test that I had recently, but it's not like I knew I was stressed out. I didn't feel myself being stressed
You
out.
didn't have, like, heart palpitations or, like...
Right.
Right.
But I knew the way that I was reacting to other people was different than I would normally react to other people and say different things. And
Like, you were snapping at them.
yeah,
Yeah.
and just kind of, and falling inward and not talking to people as much and being as open and all that sort of stuff. And so it's like with anxiety, it's very similar where you don't, at least as within my experiences, you don't know you're anxious, but you know something's weird. You know?
Yeah, yeah. I've never thought that I was an anxious person, but looking back, I'm like, oh my god, like I've probably been stressed out, like, under the currents for my entire life.
Yeah, like you said, since you
Yeah.
said that 3.5 to 9
Yeah.
was a very
And that whole like optimistic, like, everything's great,
Yeah.
like, everything's fine. I think that was, like, me just squashing. It was a survival mechanism, you know. It was kind of like, I don't have a choice, so
instead of
it's gotta
being
be fine.
like everything's fine, it was like everything's fine.
yeah, it's good, it's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah. Which, you know, some people can function like that, but, like, there's got to be a threshold for it. So my threshold capped off 2 summers ago. It was, I guess, June of 2019. So I've been teaching preschool for 20 years, right? Which is very rewarding.
Sure.
Love teaching, love the families, love helping them. But,
career.
like, I'm not sure if you've ever stepped inside a preschool classroom, but it's, on any given day, it can be a shit show. Like, it's amazing. And you can change kids' lives, but at the same time, it's like air traffic control. And you have to be smiling and laughing the whole time, right? You're like, it's fine, right? Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
And the families are appreciative and...
Sure.
But at the end of the day, you can't turn it off. Same thing. Like, you're constantly thinking about them and they're whatever. So I figured out that it was time for me to maybe start looking forward to my next path in life.
Okay.
And I was thinking social work. You know,
Wow.
like take the gifts and the lessons I've learned from this point in my life and turn it into something else. And I'm not one for change. Like, I don't want to rock the boat. I'm like...
I've had enough change.
Yeah,
at this
had
point.
enough change. Like, I've been doing this for 20 years. Could I do it for 20 more? Or is it time to maybe, like...
Switch
And
a
this
little
is huge.
something.
For me, this is, like, the biggest deal. Right? Like,
and when you want to change, it's a
oh
big
my God.
deal. Yeah.
Like, I don't ever...
Put that into motion.
Yeah, good enough is good enough. Let's just keep things going. So,
Right.
But I decided to go back to school, finish my degree, find a new job part-time. So I resigned at the preschool.
Wow. It's a
And
big move.
I did not realize what it would bring on. It was like, that was the turning point in my life. Like, literally.
Just a whirlwind of just.
It wasn't a
smack in the
whirlwind. It
face
was,
of
yeah, it was like,
reality.
for the first time ever, I could do whatever I wanted. Like,
Yeah.
I was the one who made the change. Like, I wasn't stepping into somebody else's reality and, like, just going with the flow.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, I'm making this decision to change my life,
Yeah.
and what am I going to do? Right? So,
Yeah, no, that's very, very big. That's huge.
Yeah,
Even
like-
it's
like, kind of like you leaving Ohio
Well,
and just
yeah,
moving across
I've-
the country. Like, what?
yeah. I've
like-
even had a very similar conversation recently where it's like college was kind of, it's not necessarily forced upon you, but you know you want to make sure your parents think that you're okay, and you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to college for them basically, but also because it's good for me. That's what I've heard. I don't
Yeah.
know. But you kind of live in that reality of like, all right, this college life is something that I have to go with the flow with and deal with, right? And then after that,
It's a means to an end.
right. And yeah, I'm like fortunate enough to after that to be able to realize that while I was going through it, and after that choose to be like, you know what, I want to do what I want, and I'm going to move out to a big city or around a big city at least, and I found this place in New Jersey that I'm slowly coming to terms with still.
Good.
But yeah. But I completely understand that, and
It's a huge risk. Like, it
is a
for the first time. Like, I created it. Like, I created the risk and was like, obviously I was still financially supported by my husband, and I had some wiggle room,
yeah,
but it was up to me to figure out what I wanted to do next,
yeah.
which was where things went south or north or
Right.
like all the directions.
Right. Well, when you
all
start
at the same time.
when you start doing a lot of things on your own terms and start and putting that momentum in and that sort of stuff,
Yep.
it's not only like you said before you're living on somebody else's lives basically, and now all the things from your past
Yep.
that have affected you and turned you into the person you are. It's like now that you're doing things,
Yep.
those things are going to come back and kind of form those decisions that you're making.
Yeah, it's
So-
back to that. Like, who are you? What do you want to do? Like,
Right.
here
Exactly.
you are at the age of, I guess at the point it's 41. I'm like, holy shit, now what? Like, I could do anything or I could do nothing. But,
Yeah.
So that, that happened in June. And I think ultimately that was the downfall of my marriage. Because
No longer were
I
you.
had been coasting. I think we had both been coasting for a long time. Not in a terrible way. Like I said, we hadn't had a fight.
Right.
We
But
never.
sometimes it's not a good thing
Right.
to not have fights.
Yep. because I went along with things. It was a very codependent situation, like not by either one of our faults. It was just he was who he was and I was who I was, and we just didn't dig any deeper until we did.
Until we did.
Yeah.
And that's when you found out at the surface, or at a deeper level, how you didn't match up well.
Yep. And it wasn't even like overnight.
Yeah,
it
of
was
course.
very gradual. It was,
Right.
Little things here and there. I'm not sure how much of this you're going to actually put out there, but I'm just going to keep talking.
No, that's cool.
So it basically happened where now I'm home, right? I had started back to classes at Camden County.
Well, that's kind of a jump there that you're saying, because you're saying you resigned. And
Yeah,
then what
I resigned
happened?
from preschool. That was in June.
Okay.
And then I was like, okay, so I need to do something. So I started taking classes to finish my degree
Okay.
at Camden
Okay,
County.
so that was the next step, is
that was the
finishing
next
your
step. It was
degree.
like, yeah, I'll at least take a summer class,
Okay.
right? So I started taking some classes to finish I was like, I'm going to do social work, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the next, my gut instinct, always trust it, that'll be my next step. So I took 1 or 2 classes, and I had all this time on my hands. I'm trying to find a part-time job, but like now I'm starting to socialize more. Mm-hmm. And the more I socialize, I'm like, wow. I'm like, there's parts of me that I haven't tapped into for a long time, And then my daughter's now...
You haven't smoked weed in 15 years.
Right. Yeah.
No,
Didn't go back to that.
Right. I'm just...
Definitely drank more.
Right. But your daughter was...
My daughter was at an age where she was independent, so I didn't have to worry about her. Mm-hmm. My husband's working full-time, didn't have to worry about him. And then I'm like, oh my god, I have all this time. So I got into some shenanigans, which we will not go into. But,
right. But then that's...
That's...
But that shenanigans is a decision that you made.
Correct.
Right. And...
Decision that I made that was the huge eye-opener, right? Like, shenanigans don't just happen for no reason.
For no reason, right? It was part of that gut instinct type of thing.
Yeah.
And
there's a reason that I'm drawn to this and not to that.
Any longer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I tried to do the dance we did the dance for a long time. Mm-hmm. This is where things get really interesting. As if they weren't already.
Right.
So from June until... Okay, that was June of 2019. I did this like tightrope walk, essentially, for 6 months.
Sure.
And, I was really good at like, everything's great, I'm fine, handling shit at home.
Well, and
to school.
compartmentalizing.
Compartmentalizing, I'm so good at that. So good at that.
Yeah.
Until you're not.
Until
you're not.
You can't compartmentalize anymore. The compartments start to crash into each other. Yeah.
Literally crashing.
Yeah.
So, it was March, actually.
Shit hit the fan when shit hit the fan.
Big time.
2 times as much.
Yeah.
Worldwide, nationwide.
Yep.
And
all at the same time.
On a personal level.
Yeah. The timing I think it was good.
Yeah. I'm good.
Yeah.
Sorry,
it finally came to a head where, I couldn't pretend that I was fine in our marriage, and he couldn't pretend that he wasn't paying attention to something not being fine. So the shit hit the fan, and I decided that my best course of action, because obviously, I guess with my past history, and I was unstable. I was happy, right? I was happy with
coasting.
Most areas and coasting. Mm-hmm. But I knew that like the stability of my future was probably at risk. So I decided I had like an intervention situation in my living room where I admitted to my husband that I had been drinking way too much because I couldn't handle all the things all at the same time.
Right.
Like the compartmentalizing was not happening. Shenanigans was not working. So I decided I'll go to rehab, right?
Okay, sure.
So I went to rehab in Pennsylvania for a solid month. And it's funny because it's not funny, really, but as far as my entire family goes, like, when I say that I'm probably the only person who's gone without a drink for 5 months, that's legit, like, we're talking generations.
Right.
Like,
right. I can't say that for my family
right,
either, to be honest.
right? Like, everyone's like, oh my God, you're going to rehab? I was like, well, I think I just need to dry out
Sure.
and restart and kind of, like, break the cycle.
Yeah.
Like, something's not right. I'm not happy. I'm having a great time.
Yeah.
But I need to get my head right.
Right.
So...
And that's a very good mindset to realize. A realization that you need to be like, okay, I need to do something that's healthy for me to get me into a more comfortable place.
And it was frightening. I didn't know what to expect. But then you get there, and I'm not sure if you have any experience with anyone who's been to rehab for any reason or, you know, a facility like that, but you walk around every day thinking that there's something wrong with you and that there's some weakness, and then you get to a place where there's like 50 people who have the exact same story, that have the exact same understanding of, you know, what brings you from point A to point B, and it's going to be okay. And, you know, it was a really important month.
I bet you met so many.
I did. I met some amazing people that I still talk to.
It really puts things in perspective.
Huge.
Really, really well. I agree. Yeah, I mean, I did not necessarily rehab, but juvie was a little similar to that.
No, it does. It kind of like resets your brain and your
outlook.
And
just all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Right? I very much agree. So,
and, you know, obviously you're worried about, oh my God, like here I am at the age of 41, I'm in rehab, like, the fuck?
Yeah.
What are people going to think? And I'm like, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't
right?
matter. That's one of those things that they probably instilled in you in rehab a lot.
It doesn't matter.
That it just really doesn't matter what other people think. And for the most part, what you think other people are going to think is typically wrong. Because I bet once you came out, your friends are very supportive, typically. And we're like, oh, how are you?
No, the entire time.
Yeah, the entire time. Exactly.
Yeah. And I would say 90% of my friends were like, we never even saw you drunk. Like, that wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, you're right, that's the problem. You know, because you become so good at it, and the term functional alcoholic is obviously there for a reason.
Right.
But the point is, like, I did it also not just to dry out for a bit, but also to kind of give my life some separation from the drama that was happening in my house.
Right.
You know?
Well, and I'm sure what you mentioned previously about how you couldn't keep yourself from bringing work home, I'm sure that was with lot more other parts of your life as well.
Everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you said, everything was crashing. The compartments were falling apart. The file cabinets started falling into
basically.
one another.
And I was like, I got this. I'm like, nope.
Getting crushed between
I do
two.
not.
Yeah.
I do not.
So it gave you some separation from that to get out of that space for a second.
Yep.
And
really...
to
do some mental digging. Group therapy was amazing, which I'd never experienced before.
Yeah, me neither.
But it really helps you dig deeper into, like, even if it wasn't about drinking, which at that point in my life it definitely was. I was using that to kind of, like, bring
it's
everything.
Like that optimism.
Yeah, exactly.
Drinking equals optimism.
Everything's fine. It helped me to get back to compartmentalizing a little bit, like, figure out what's working in my life, what's not, why do you do these things, like, break the cycle of generations. Like, I don't want to repeat history.
You're fighting against generations.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yep.
It's a tough feat to
not
handle.
only as far as drinking goes, but like emotionally. You know, I mean things that's in your DNA. Mental health, mental like all of it.
I mean, addiction is genetic.
Yep.
Like literally everything can be genetic. Anxiety, as you had experienced at that point, you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, that rehab is a very good place to.
Yeah,
like
it's a reset, essentially.
Yeah, and just to even take a step back, not only take a step back from that life, but to put thoughts in your head about self-awareness, as opposed to filling your mind with your daily work and family and personal relationships, taking a moment to have self-awareness and to have people around you questioning you and keeping you on your toes about all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, my
Definitely.
therapist was amazing. We would sit, there would be like 6 or 8 of us like sitting in a circle, and when we first started, we would have this discussion about like, so what do you think are some of your issues that you need to work towards? And I was like, I need to find my voice. Like, that was day one. I was like, I've never used my voice. I sit in the background, I don't say anything. So we would start discussions, and she knew in a second when I was holding back, and she would just look at me, and I was like, you know,
Yeah,
like,
fine.
so
Yeah.
I started being proactive and like volunteering information, and you know, it's okay to take a risk and say something
That might be
in
weird.
front of a group that might be weird, but then there's somebody else who really might appreciate it and need it.
Because they've done the same thing and they thought it would be weird
Huge.
too. And
Yeah. Like, I
Right.
could be the voice for somebody else, no problem. But like, as far as myself goes,
yeah,
it took me 1 month of rehab to like realize that.
right. That huge moment for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how did that factor into your life after rehab?
Oh, it got real interesting after that.
Even more interesting.
Yeah.
You just-
So then I got back from rehab, and you know, now obviously because of the shenanigans, I got back and I was this different person. You know, I had sent letters back and forth to my husband like, I'm gonna be different when I get back,
Sure.
right? Something's been
Opened.
woken,
it's
like.
And it's pouring.
Not
through
only
that,
am I
yeah.
sober, like you've never known me sober,
Yeah.
right? You don't know this Christina. You've never seen this, you know. But also, we had this other issue that we were dealing with, and now we're trying to navigate like marriage therapy and me not drinking and going to AA, and I'm doing like daily, what was it called, like outpatient therapy, basically for AA. So yeah, there's all these like excellent things happening, and I'm getting stronger, right? So I'm becoming like the person that I probably have been all along, but was
Kind of shoved.
numbed
Yeah.
to a certain extent.
It's a good word for it.
Yeah, no, that's what it is. It's why we do what we do. That's why we drink, is to like,
Numb it down.
everything's fine, right?
Everything's fine.
So we started doing marriage counseling, but obviously it's COVID,
Sure.
so we're doing it online. And my husband found a therapist that was very forgiveness based. Okay, so it's all about, you know, just because things happened in the marriage, like the number one thing you have to do is forgive each other, all of it, right? Like it takes two.
Right.
And he did a lot of like visual imagery and physical,
Assertions or something
yeah, like
that.
you know, tapping and breathing and visual
Yeah,
imagery and
getting
things like that.
pinpoints and
So I was
channeling your chakras.
good with that. Like I'm like, forgiveness, great,
Yeah.
right? And then we take my husband, who's very type A, and he's the one who was on the receiving end of the shenanigans, unfortunately.
And so it's a little harder.
It's a lot harder.
A lot harder.
A lot harder.
Right, to accept.
But he chose a therapist, right? So now
Sure.
we're like, let's do this. Great.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was this wave of like, the therapist would encourage us to talk to each other, right? So obviously I was admitting I'm not good at sharing my feelings. I'm not, you know, I'm learning,
Right.
right? I'm getting better, but it's hard for me to like take a risk and throw it out there because I've swallowed it for so long,
Right.
Back to not fighting for 15 years. Which I'm not talking like fights, and like even with little things, like I wouldn't give my opinion if he said one. And
You put that toilet paper on the wrong way, I wasn't going to do anything about
exactly.
it. Yeah.
Like, you know, oh my God, you left the sponge in the sink. And I was like, okay. Like, literally, like, I would just swallow it.
Sure.
So,
And then, so, you know, and sometimes in the end, it just can't
Yeah.
work out anymore.
yep. And there's a reason things happen.
Right.
Like, shenanigans, like we said, don't happen for no reason.
Right.
When you find someone that you connect with on a different level,
It means
at
you're,
the right time
you're
in
on
your
a
life,
different level.
yeah, you're on a different level. Like,
That's a big realization
Yeah.
to come to when you've been in that level for 15 years.
yeah,
Which is crazy.
yeah,
But, so, all that happened.
right.
And we don't have to get into the dirtiness.
No, we're not going details.
Right, details of everything that happens
I'm
after
gonna
that.
protect
but,
the innocent.
Right, but now you're at this point where it's almost kind of come the chapter is closing. The pages are coming to an end, and it's finally this next level is what you are going to experience for an undetermined amount of time.
I mean, the rest of my life.
Yeah.
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 I
Well,
feel
and
like
that's not to say there aren't any other levels that you'll find out along the way.
But I feel like it can only get better.
Sure.
Like, I have finally, like we were talking earlier, it's about being comfortable in your own skin, which I never have been, and I feel like lately, every day, I'm more and more aware of, like, what I need, what I want, what I'm capable of. Like, I don't know, it's
Right. No, yeah. I think the reason that I wanted to bring up and kind of talk about and dig into the past since you've been born is like how much all of that has played into this moment. You know what I mean? Of being confused at first. Oh, I'm in Ireland, now I'm in Georgia, now I'm in New Jersey, you know, and having that confusion and kind of that go with the flow type of thing. And still along the way, still having that mindset to know, like you said, that to have some sort of consistency, to have some sort of organization and compartmentalization. And how, for me, that right now is it seems like a very useful tool, and it seems, like I said, almost like a superpower, right? But how that can become detrimental as you progress, and how that can become a bad thing. Further
I do not want to fall back into the same cycle again. For sure. I am definitely more aware of my weaknesses at this point in my life.
Sure.
I will never fall back into those patterns.
Yeah. And that's what's great.
Do I appreciate the struggle that I went through? Yes, because it helped create.
Experience.
Yeah, it helped create the person I am today. And moving forward, it's about understanding that I'm capable. It's okay to express opinions. It's it's like so basic, right? It's stupid stuff, but if there's like anyone out there who goes through their life just floating along and letting other people make decisions for them, don't do it.
Right,
like,
because it's going to end in an explosion.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to end in
there's only so much swallowing. Okay.
Before you regurgitate.
Yeah, it's like the Green Mile. It's like that guy who absorbed other people's energy to the point where it made him sick.
Yeah. Yeah, I do remember that. And
you can't do it.
You just can't. And now you're at this point, though, where luckily you've hit this. Instead of going insane and just becoming a raging alcoholic,
right?
And
I have a healthy
respect.
Everybody. I have a healthy respect for alcohol. I don't do any heavy drugs, obviously. I still maintain and love my job. Yeah. I'm well respected.
Sure.
I'm a good person. Like, my daughter loves me. It's just like, I feel like it's almost like life starting over. It's like a rebirth.
A reset, yeah.
A restart.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's
and not like in some stupid idealized, like, oh my god, she's lost her mind, like she's gotten divorced and she went to rehab and she's living in La La Land. No. I'm like, actually, for the first time, on my own 2 feet, make my own decisions.
Right.
On my own terms.
And that's what I love about this story. I think that's what the biggest takeaway for me is, that there is not any certain, you can be, like you said, 15, you can be 22, 25, 40, you could be 60, 80. I just watched this movie called Into the Wild, and it's about this kid who goes into the wild, basically. But he meets this, like, I think, like, 70-year-old man, and he's climbing up the rocks, and he's like, come on, you can climb up here. And then the guy's just like, he's like, I think you're just too settled into who you are and have always been, and kind of pushes him a little bit more to have a new start, and to always realize. There's some people that say they're like, oh, I'm at my wit's end, or this is the end of the road or something. It's like, we're still here. You were still talking about it. The fact that you can even say that to me means it's not the end of the road. And that's what I really love about your story, is that you've come to this place now where while the future does look scary and uncertain and intense, you're more confident in yourself than you ever have been.
Oh my God, it's funny because I'm a Gemini, right?
Sure.
And it's only within the last, I don't know, year or so that I've really accepted that Gemini personality, because I think that also was squashed, and I'm like, all of a sudden now I'm like, oh. I'm like, now I get it.
Yeah. Before you were kind of relating, but you're like, that's not really me.
Yeah, exactly. Now I'm like, oh yeah,
shit.
it's on.
Oh, shit. Yeah, walking into it. All right. Well, I think that's a good point to kind of wrap it up. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to include in that, but we basically covered your entire life.
Right? That's a lot for now.
Yeah, this should be enough for now. So I appreciate you. I really do appreciate it. Wild stuff, huh? Crazy wild world we live in, huh? I don't even know what this podcast is anymore. What do we just talk. Let's just get in here. I'm gonna do a few short stories. We're gonna have people on, everyone, people come and go, right? And this is where we're at. But I hope you guys enjoy it. It's a fun ride so far. I'm gonna try to keep, obviously, posting as many episodes as I can, hopefully weekly. My life is getting pretty busy right now, just with spring happening, things opening up, work, stand-up, all this sort of stuff going on. Maybe I'll do another check-in episode. Usually I don't do them that often, but maybe I will. Who knows? Like I said, I'm going to try to keep pumping these out, so be patient with me. I appreciate y'all sticking with me, and I hope you enjoy the variety of episodes that you get from the show. And I hope you have a nice week. So thanks for listening. I love you, and then okay, bye.
I'm going to sing Cher Lloyd by Cher Lloyd or Rebecca G. Then. And don't forget all the trouble we got into.
Why does somebody not know how to flush a toilet after they've had a shit?
What do you mean?
Well, I was fucking one of yous. Disgusting!